Shalom, y'all. I am Lorraine Lindsay, affectionately known as Lolo, and you are watching Lolo's House. This is a video podcast that talks about real talk conversations about the untold truths of what would be said if these walls could talk. And once again, I am here with my favorite girls, the Lipstick Ladies, here to talk about real topics, that eavesdropping conversations that would be had amongst the closest friends, cocktails and conversations. I've got my girl Carmen, Charlene, and Giovanna. So here we are today, and what we are going to talk about today, ladies, is a topic on lies.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's a topic.
This is a juicy topic because what I did was I put out a filler out there, and I kind of said to people, if we were to talk about lies, what would be the feedback? And surprisingly enough, a lot of conversation or response that I got actually were from men. You know, it kind of seems that when we talk about lies, we always assume that the men are the ones that are always lying, but that's not necessarily true. So before we start, I kind of want to break down lies into two different categories, right? So I'm going to use a little stupid metaphor relating back to when I was an EMT. So when I was an EMT, you had two types of patients. You had one patient that was either a trauma patient, or you had type 2, which was a medical patient. Now the trauma patients were like cut and dry. There was a situation that was traumatic that happened right then and there. And the only thing that we could do was load and go. Get the patient in the ambulance and get into the operating room. The only thing that was going to save them was an operating room. And the procedure was the symptoms and whatever was very simple. Loss of blood, get them to operating room. The second type of patient that we would deal with were medical patients. And those patients were the kind that were symptomatic. They either had chronic illnesses that were over a period of time, or they had an acute illness where all of a sudden they started to feel sick and they didn't know where it was stemming from. So there's a lot more work that had to be done to understand what got them to that point. So I'm going to kind of put lies into one of the two categories. The traumatic lies are the obvious, like infidelity, cheating, right? Those are things that boom, it happens and it needs surgery. There's something that needs to happen. Lies that have to do with addiction or financial problems, where one person doesn't realize that there's a crisis in the home and it's so catastrophic that it's something that needs immediate attention, or it will completely and utterly destroy a family and a relationship. That's one thing, and that'll be something for a different day. But today I want to talk about the second category, the medical lies. The lies that are symptomatic, that they're little things here and there, and one day you wake up in your relationship and you start to realize, all right, there's a problem here and we're sick. And I want to talk about the lies because it pertains not only to men telling the lies, but us women not being honest and telling those lies as well. So let's just like jump right into it.
Cool.
What do you think are some of those lies, those symptomatic little teeny bitty lies that can lead up to big things that cause problems? What do you think?
As a single woman, when you jump into a relationship with a person and they're being upfront with who they are, and you know that their expectations of you is not something that you can maintain, but you try to go on and say, oh, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And it's totally out of your character, or it's totally, it takes away from who you are.
Right.
Not that it's wrong, it's just not something I can live up to. That's a lie.
What do you think, G?
I think when you're in a relationship with someone and you kind of don't want to face what the problems are, so you begin to tell yourself with them that, you know, it's okay and it doesn't bother you, and you keep kind of just going along, riding the wave, and then finally you just explode because you've now kept in this problem or whatever it is that's been bothering you, and you know you're lying. Same thing, kind of, you're lying to yourself.
That's a great lie, right? That's the biggest lie we think we tell ourselves often is the lie. It's not necessarily the lie someone's telling us, but sometimes it's the lie we tell ourselves. Right. What do you think, Charlene?
I'm there too, understanding what a lie is too, versus compromise, versus, I mean, there's a lot that comes with that. So for me, a lie to myself, I guess it's just having a conversation inside of me, and if there's a debate and I'm trying to just, you know, say yes, this is what's going to happen, I'm lying to myself because I'm not sure, right? When you're unsure about something and you go for it, even though it's not something you want to do, whatever that may be, to me that's a lie, right? So I think lying to myself would be the biggest issue in
Biggest
a relationship.
issue.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
What about you, Lorraine?
Well, I'm going to bring up a couple things. Ones that I've personally dealt with,
Okay.
and then actually some that some of you out there have actually asked me and questioned me about. I'm going to call them, again, these little medical lies, these symptomatic lies that result in sickness and illness within the relationship, and can ultimately become very critical. You can be sick for a period of time, and if that sickness gets untreated,
right?
thank you, perfect word, untreated, it can become critical. And I think a lot of us have faced that at some point where we think that our lies are protecting the relationship, right? So here's a couple that I jotted down. A lie about how you really feel about a situation. When you're in a relationship and you pretend to be okay with something you're not really okay with. That's a great lie that we often get ourselves into.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to a head, or when you feel that you can't take it no more, you want to confront the person, you don't really know how to. So that's a great lie, and that's one of the to both of your point. It's a lie that we tell ourselves, because I think in the beginning we intentionally we truly believe like, okay, I can deal with this, I can handle this.
Can I share a story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so recently in a relationship, we hit it off great, and he didn't want to date a woman with kids. So I have 3 kids. But that was always the forefront of his mind.
So he was actually honest with that.
He was honest with it, but that wasn't what he saw his life. Not that it's wrong, but you're dating a woman with children, so that comes with, I have their father, it comes with kids being kids. He didn't really want to deal with all that. So the lie from the beginning, that probably was the destruction from the beginning, was that he was compromising his beliefs or what he really wanted, and I was compromising, okay, well, I can probably just, not have a relationship with their dad as it was before. So I was changing things about myself to try to accommodate that relationship. So those were the lies that were told from the beginning. And I think we have to identify those immediately, and it could have.
And again, that goes back to what you two said, is that a lot of times lies start with the lie we tell ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so sometimes we compromise ourselves with a lie, so that for the sake of being in a relationship that doesn't, like we talked in the last episode, expectations and standards, we tell ourselves a lie, so we can give ourselves this intention that it's going to meet our standard, and it's just a lie.
Right.
Then it goes even deeper to what is a lie. What identifies anything to be a lie?
Well, I think a lie is just not telling the truth about a thing, whatever that thing is.
But it
And
could
or
be
interpretation could be yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
perception is reality. So if I interpret this thing that may look like a lie to somebody else, but I see it as something different that may not be a lie, that's kind of the depth of how that, for me, that's how that looks too. So for me, a lie has to only be with myself, because I can't give that to anything else but me.
Right.
That's how I see that.
Okay, so we'll touch on that a little bit more, but moving on to the next one, the lies that are told to avoid confrontation. Now, this is something that I dealt with recently in my own relationship. So we've been together for almost 6 years. And of course, within that time frame, there has been a lot of issues, particularly in the beginning, that, here's what I've learned. You meet the person and we share stories. But you love the person, you're crazy about the person, your emotions are high. And so what happens is, in the beginning, you're very accepting of whatever they tell you. Then at some point, you become more emotionally involved. And it opens up a door for a lot of vulnerabilities. Now all of a sudden you start to realize, I really don't want to hear that much detail about their past. I really don't want to know that much about their ex. I'm really not comfortable. But you set it up that they can tell you whatever they want. And now they're telling you whatever they want, and you're feeling insecure about it. So this was kind of like the foundation that was set for me. Well, what happens is, as time goes on and things evolve, you get past certain things. But if it causes enough tension in the relationship, and it causes enough fighting and contempt, the person then becomes hesitant to share the truth with you. So then when you go to ask them a question, for them, they rather avoid the confrontation because in their mind they're thinking, well, if I tell this person the truth, they're going to react. And I'd rather not deal with that, so I'm going to tell them a lie.
Yes.
So there's those type of lies.
Pacifying, yeah.
And I don't even know if it's like pacifying, it's just that they're afraid.
I've told that kind of lie recently to avoid conflict, and I just felt like there should never be a reason that I should have to lie to somebody and blatantly lie. But I knew the consequence if I didn't lie would have been, something I didn't feel like dealing with at the time. So there's just questions you have to ask.
So it was a
yourself.
pacifier,
Right.
excuse me.
Doesn't make me a
Right.
liar as a person, but I did lie about a situation because I didn't feel like the consequence of telling the truth when I wasn't doing anything wrong in my mind. So sometimes we just have different opinions about how things look. Just like talking about you don't want to hear about it, but you're asking the question, and it's like, I really don't want to hear about, his exes. But, you got to question yourself in that and say, do I really want to be with a person that I can't be completely honest with?
Well,
Or
that
if I share my life and I'm transparent about who I am, and you use that against me because in my truth, this is who I am, this is my experiences I've
My
had,
past.
Right.
Yeah.
and you use that against me to
Right.
define it as, and I hold myself high. I think I'm a great person morally. So to be called a liar or that stuff, you don't want to put yourself in that position.
But okay, so it brings me to the next thing, which is something actually a lot of men out there had said to me. Sometimes a lot of the guys said to me, the reason why I lie or why I have lied is because I don't feel safe
Right.
telling the truth. And I felt like that was a very valid and fair thing coming from men dealing with their partnerships with women. And I think that
They'd
is
rather
something.
lie than suffer the consequences.
Right, and so it was even thought-provoking for me because I don't like to be lied to. But I also know that I'm not necessarily comfortable with the truth. So it brings me to another thing. And again, we're going to bring all this
That's
full
pretty
circle.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want the truth? Do you really want the
But
truth?
then sometimes you can't handle the truth.
That's the
Once
thing.
you
And I
have it.
think that's why it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Also, how quickly do you respond? Sometimes
Because
you
of-
need a minute to process and then deliver. On the fly, you're like, crap, I got to answer quickly. So
Right.
what's that going to be? So I think there's some of that. too.
Right, and I
Yeah.
think that, and whether it's male or female, it doesn't matter who it is, gender-wise or whatnot. It's just that if a person feels, regardless who they are in the relationship, that they are not safe to tell the truth, how is that properly handled? And for the person who looks at it like, well, I don't give a care, you should tell me the truth regardless. Tell me the truth and let me deal with it. The person says, but I love you and I don't want to lose you, or I don't want there to be a fight, or I don't want to be an issue. Are you going to allow me to be safe enough to tell you the truth? Because sometimes we're very unaccepting. We want the truth is what we tell ourselves.
Right.
But really what we want is for them to tell us.
think
We actually really want them to tell us the lie.
This comes-
And we want to believe that lie is actually the truth,
truth.
because a lot of times we're not comfortable with what the truth is, especially if it pertains to somebody else, someone, a past experience, or quite frankly, like the experience they're having with you. A lot of times we're upset and we're angry, and we'll say to a person when we're fighting or arguing, we're saying, I don't know, I need to know how you feel, but the person doesn't feel safe to even say, this is how I feel, this is what I'm experiencing with you.
Or have they processed it to deliver that?
Right.
Sometimes I know, in my example with my husband, sometimes he doesn't know how to respond for his own reasons. And me, I want an answer now, like, well, tell me, I just communicate with me, and he's got to take it. We're different people. So
But are you
understanding that.
receptive? Are you
I've
open?
learned to be.
Okay.
I've learned to be.
That's the key.
Because
Yes,
I know for
exactly.
me, if
It's
I'm
growth.
being very transparent, I would like to think when I'm asking for the truth, I would like to believe in that moment that I really want the truth, but I'm not really prepared. And when I'm asking for the truth, what I'm really asking for is, please tell me this isn't true. That's really what I'm asking for. And I think that I've had to learn to be honest with that, because a lot of times who a person really is doesn't really truly sit well with me, because I have an idea in my mind of who I want them to be, and it doesn't always line up.
I think that's everybody has that. Just like we were speaking last time, we fall in love with the potential of the person, of who we want them to be, what we see they can be, but they're presenting themselves as they are.
Yeah,
they're telling you exactly who they are. So I'm the type of person, like you said, I have to process. I'm not quick. Like, you could come at me with something and I'm like, I don't have a response right away because I'm not quick, but I process it and I thoroughly think about it from all sides, and then I can come back and say, I see what you're saying, you know, I see my fault.
That's maturity, yes,
right.
for sure.
And I'm very intentional about not responding quickly because of that, because you can get yourself, you know, if somebody's telling you something that you don't want to hear, you got to kind of listen to what they're saying, because just because I don't like it doesn't mean there wasn't a valid reason why they did it.
Right, and what state are they in? What
Right.
state are you in?
Right.
What's that look like in that
Right.
moment?
Right. I can't just be like, I don't want you doing this, and then it's like, well, I wasn't doing anything, you know, and then it just gets all out of proportion, you know. So I'm intentional about that with my thoughts.
So G, what do you think about this? Because I always got to get you to chime in, because I feel like you like we all take it in, you really take it in, and then when I ask you, you're like, boom. What do you think about being lied to, first of all? And I'm not talking about the big lies. I'm talking, what do you feel like if you ask your partner a truth? Like, let me give an example. What would be a good example of something? Like, let's say it pertains to an ex. Okay, this is a good one. And you ask your partner about feelings about an ex. Do you really want to know the truth of how they really felt? And can you handle it?
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really can. I want to know the truth about how they felt, and I want to know the truth about how they feel now, and vice versa. Like, I want to be able to explain to them how I felt about my exes, and, you know, how I grew from each one, and I want them to be able to accept that, you know, not use that against me in an argument, or, you know, make me feel like I can't talk to them about an ex or something. I feel like that's important for us to be able to express, you know, what we've gone through in our lives, because that's, at the end of the day, that's a part of your life, and whether you stay with that person or not, those experiences are still going to be there. So I want someone who's going to accept, you know, who I am.
But what do you do? Let's say in the beginning, you're like, I'm just going to be honest. You're itchy for this.
Go ahead.
Right, because I've done with this too. Like, to a fault, I can be brutally honest.
Right.
To a fault.
And
Where-
so can I.
Right.
To the point where it's like, we're like too honest sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can be too
But
honest.
but what does that mean to be
Right, I'm
too
thinking,
honest?
what is that? Is it because you come across judgmental? Because,
It's like,
again, it goes back to
well-
what is truth
Well, what I
versus
mean
lie.
by too honest is like, you can just tell it all and feel like I'm just keeping it real. Like, did my ex call me? Yeah. Did my ex check on me? Yes. Did I have a conversation? Yeah, I had a conversation. And then it becomes a thing.
Right.
And that person is like, why are you talking to your ex? Why is it got to be like this? Why do you feel like you need to call? And then you're like, okay, forget it. The next time the ex calls, I'll just delete the message, because this is my thing.
Because I don't want to deal with the
I don't want to
consequences.
deal with the confrontation. And in my mind, and this is selfishly, and I think that some people out there can relate to this. In my mind, it's like, I'm with you. I'm in this relationship with you. I'm an adult. I have decided to be in a monogamous relationship, and you don't have to define that for me. I know what that means. And I don't know what that means because I'm trying to do it for you, but my integrity is important to me, and so that's important. So, if an ex calls me, or I have a conversation with somebody from my past, I know what's appropriate and I know what's inappropriate. And so in my mind, and this was a conflict for a long time in my relationship, was in my mind, it's no big deal if I talk to this person. I don't care.
And you know why you don't care? Because you know in your
There's
heart that
Right,
there's
there.
nothing
but there's a
left
trust
there.
thing here, though, so it's deeper behind that on the other
And
side.
that's-
So
Yes,
that's-
okay, but
yes.
here I'm going to throw this wrench in it because I'm going to be very transparent, be very honest. The argument was always this. okay, that's fine. But if I had the same communication with my ex, would you have a problem with it? And the truth is, I would.
Understanding who that ex was in his life.
Right?
Yeah, but no, but yeah.
So, but there's a double standard in that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, I know I'm in control when I'm talking to my ex. What I don't know is whether or not you're in control. So at the
That's
end,
deep right there.
but
Yeah,
you have to be honest with
yes,
yourself, because
yeah.
again, when we said from the beginning, am I lying to the person, or am I first lying to myself? Because forget about the lie. It's about what is present in your life, and what are the boundaries, and how do you respect that
That's
without
exactly
that
it.
person
Yes.
being overly controlling
Well,
over
I
your
think
life.
it goes back to what I was like when people have he's letting you, or that person is letting you know, I don't like it.
Yes.
Right.
So you
upfront.
have to decide, okay, he doesn't like it. So if I do it, it doesn't matter. The action is there.
Yes, the consequences.
It's the action.
Yes.
So
For sure.
Right.
you
That's
don't
fair.
like
That's
it.
fair.
It's just the act. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. And this is my, my recent breakup was based on the action. And it's like, but it was nothing there. Like you read, it was a lot of other stuff, but it's the action. So I get that. So you have to decide and tell yourself, can I deal with that?
Right.
Also goes back to that foundation thing. What is the
Right.
foundation? Because if the foundation is broken, or there's some
Right.
holes in that, then we got to go back to that foundation and repair and fill, and then that becomes, lies don't exist in that strong foundation like that.
Right.
It's seen in a different way.
And
It
you
might
already
be a
knew-
misunderstanding versus a lie,
Yeah.
or misinterpretation versus a lie. But a lie to me is something that's it's clear. It's direct. It's a lie.
Well, she already
know.
knew the action was wrong because you were deleting the text.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what
But
I
it
mean?
was
And
like-
we've all been there.
And and it's a measure of wrong, right?
Right.
So it's like,
Exactly.
I'm thinking in my mind,
You're protected.
honestly, I'm thinking, I just don't want to have a problem.
Right.
I know I'm not doing anything wrong here, but I just don't want the conflict. And it would even be as far as, I wouldn't even necessarily reciprocate a conversation, but it would just be the fact that they reached out that I would omit. So here's another question. There's one thing to blatantly lie, and then there's omitting things. Do we consider that still a lie?
Well, back to what you just said right now, omitting. I mean, why wouldn't you just converse about that situation?
Because for me, like in my mind, it's like, if they don't ask, I don't tell. But if they ask, I'll tell. But if they don't ask, I won't tell. It's just
Understanding
like,
that they would be bothered by it.
I think you understand your partner. You begin, especially depending on where you're at in the relationship.
Right.
The timing.
Yeah,
That's a
so
good
you've
point.
been married for a long time. You know exactly what's going to tick your husband off. He knows exactly what's going to tick you off. So you might admit information just to avoid.
To
you know,
time.
Right. But
right.
in newer relationships, you're not clear yet. So, like me, I'm probably just too honest about everything. I'm like, here I am, I'm transparent, this is me.
I'm like, stop.
Yeah. I'm like,
Too much
I have nothing to
information.
hide,
Yeah.
but then but I don't know that person yet. They don't deserve that yet. So
Right.
that's something I'm dealing with.
Well, what do you mean by
myself.
they don't deserve that yet?
Well,
They
they
don't
haven't
deserve-
earned it yet.
Correct. Like,
Earned what?
Earned to know that much about. I don't know you enough to share
You
that
know,
much
there's
information.
an honor
about
system.
myself.
But you
Yes.
still give out that information, though.
Well, like I said, I was married most of I'm still kind of new to dating.
Yeah.
So I've always been transparent. That's my
Right.
personality. I don't have too many secrets. I'm a hairstylist, so I tell everybody.
yeah.
I'm just a transparent
It's
person.
how you let people
Right.
in
I'm
to
very,
make a mark.
very.
Yeah.
If I make a mistake, I can own it, and it's like, oh, you don't have nothing to say to me.
Right. But here's my thing, and this is where it gets really sticky and dicey, because again, I'm going to go back to the whole medical metaphor. What I've learned is that, first of all, what I've really learned, which is new to me, I've learned that people in your relationship sometimes can teach you to lie to them, and they don't realize that they're doing it. So if they have a belief system in their mind that they have trust issues, okay, when they are dealing with their own trust issues, independent of you and who you are to them, what happens is they can become very, very controlling. And so to the point, even to an extreme point where people can be even explosive in that, where every little thing is deception. And so you find yourself on the receiving end of that, of constantly defending yourself. You're always trying to make sure that every little thing is not a thing. But yet, because they already have those issues, they're looking for the deception in everything you do. They will create literally a narrative inside their mind of what you're doing, and you can tell them, no, this is what it is. But because they struggle with trust issues from whatever, whether it's
And you know
childhood
that,
trauma,
though. But you know that already.
sometimes you don't, you learn it, you
Right,
figure it
right,
out.
but at that point-
But what happens is at some point, it becomes so incredibly draining for you
Yes.
that what you end up doing is you try to protect, in your mind you're thinking you're protecting them from their distrust by making sure that you give them the answers they need. And you end up getting manipulated to that. And so what ends up happening is when they uncover a lie, they don't realize that you taught them to do that. Because again, to some of the men's points out there is that they don't feel safe to tell you the truth because you're already dealing with your own trust issues. And so that right there in and of itself is a problem because it can become so infectious for both people, the liar and the person being lied to. And another thing with that is a lot of times when those people have that level of trust issues, they're deceiving in and of itself. So they're the kind of people that will go through your phone, or they'll go and double check, they'll trace through your steps, they'll watch everything you do because they already have trust issues. And so the belief system in their mind is, I don't trust. And so as honest as you think you're being, they're still looking for the deception, and they will find something to perceive as deception. And then here you are on the receiving end trying to defend that, and it just becomes this really unhealthy balance of give and take with something that is feeding not love in that relationship, but completely and utterly insecurities. So how do you deal with that and work through that when that's a real thing in a relationship? Because a lot of people have trust issues.
I think, if that's showing up in the beginning of a relationship, then your answer's already there.
Or
Now,
at
this
any
is-
point.
Right, this is something that's built, and you need to go back to why. What's going on? And figure that out too. Again, I go back to the foundation, I go back to the boundaries, because people don't just distrust just
A lot of
because,
people
it's
are
a
not
matter.
comfortable with sharing why, or they might not even know
No,
why.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
but we choose to
Good
hang
point.
out and see what's going to happen next because of whatever our own
Well,
reasons
when you
are.
invest time and you
You think
like,
you love someone.
yeah, you love someone, and there's things that you really like about this person, and it's like, but there's things, there's a few things you really don't like.
Yeah.
So you kind of justify, and then it's like you find yourself in
Then you're lying to yourself.
You're lying
Uh-huh.
to yourself, and it's really hard when you're in something to decipher through that and say, these are things that I'm totally against.
Not only that, but I think also too, when you are a trustworthy person and you don't struggle with the issue of having trust
Right.
issues, when you are in a relationship with someone who is struggling with trust issues and that is now manifesting in the relationship, you have the propensity to think that you can fix it. I'm going to be the most honest in the beginning. I'm going to be the most honest, and I'm going to be very clear with with this person, and then it backfires on you.
Yes.
And so you're like, why was I that honest? Why was I telling that person the truth? Oh my God, they're going to freak out. I'm not doing anything. I love this person. And you start to go through this thing and you start to pick apart what you should say and what you shouldn't say.
Right. Pre-disclosing everything,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
it's,
sometimes when people are doing things that are not honest, and they'll make it so that you're the dishonest person.
oh,
Yeah, yeah, manipulation.
Manipulation,
Yeah.
narcissism. I'm
Yeah.
never wrong. You're wrong.
Ugh.
You did everything.
being no
You-
accountability whatsoever.
Yeah, like,
Whatsoever. Yeah.
When we had our issues in our marriage, there was a lot of that too, and I understand that. So I found myself careful in my words because it's sensitive for both of us. Emotions do things to our mind, and we hear things completely out of context. Sometimes that creates deception or beliefs thereof. So I think a lot of that is knowing, okay, who am I? Where am I at? What's my state? Who is this person? What's happening? And then, again, that comes with time and maturity. Not everybody knows that skill or has that ability to really back up and see because you're in it.
Yeah.
So again,
Right.
a lie continues when we allow it to continue, and it ends when we decide no.
When
more.
does it end?
When you decide that. We have
And
to
so
decide
let's
that.
just say that is a great point. Let's just say you've been keeping up a lie. Whether you feel that lie is really, because sometimes when we lie, we don't think it's that big of a deal. Like literally, when you really love your person and you think it's just to avoid confrontation, in your mind,
it's not a big
it's
deal.
not that big of a deal. You're like, it's harmless. I'm not really doing anything other than just lying. But let's say you keep that lie going, and you've decided at one point, like you said, that enough is enough. I don't want to lie anymore. How do you deal with that when you come clean? Like when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to tell the truth. When you decide the lie is over, do you? Okay, let me rephrase it. When you decide the lie is over and you're done telling the lie, do you just come clean and tell the truth, or do you just make the lie kind of go away? What would you do, G?
I think you would have to come clean and tell the truth. Yeah, I think that's the best option. Because then I think if you were to just like let it go away, then you're just lying to yourself.
Do you think it's across the board, or does it depend on what the lie is?
I mean, I think it can depend per like situation, whether it's that serious or not. Definitely.
You were gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I think it is subjective to what, right? So let's say 2 years pass and something happened, I didn't wash it. It was me that broke that glass, I mean, again, it just depends on the
Right.
measure of that,
Right.
to what it's worth and what it's not, or waiting for the person to be ready to, if they ever are ready to receive whatever we believe that truth to be. Because again, it's back to what our belief is, right? Because a lie is a lie according to me, unless I say that's red and I know it's really white, and I'm just saying no, it's red. But
Well, okay,
up
so
to
that's a
them,
good point. Well,
Yeah.
that's interesting what you said. You said a lie is a lie according to me.
Mm-hmm.
But is that true?
No.
That's not true.
Well, according to what I believe a lie is.
Yeah, but let's say I believe that something is a truth,
Mhm.
but that person on the receiving end says, no, what you're doing is a lie.
That's their perception.
Right, but when
So
you're
it's
in a relationship where you're perceiving truth and they're perceiving a lie, how do you handle that?
Right.
Yeah, for me, lie is heavy. So a lie to me, again, I don't know, a lie it has to be self. A lie has to be self. Unless we're talking about cheating and all that, that's obvious, that's right and wrong. But when it comes to things like this, it's a matter of how we perceive that and deliver it and what we want to believe to be a lie or the truth.
But don't you think a lie is against what you believe to be true?
Correct.
By simple,
Correct.
right? So, for example, let's say a woman who gets married and she has children. She decides to be a stay-at-home mom, and that is something she becomes very excited about. And as her children are getting older, and now she's at home primarily, and she's just the stay-at-home mother, and her husband has a career, and he has friends, and he has things outside of work, and now I've lost my identity, and I'm in this mommy mode, and I don't know who I am anymore. And in the beginning, I thought that this was a thing, and I thought I was good, but no, I want my own life, and I'm resenting this life, and I want to do this, and I won't say anything.
And she's lying to herself.
Yeah.
Then that's a lie.
Mhm.
But
To
in the
herself.
beginning, it was a truth.
But she changed.
She
grew.
changed.
Yeah.
So at what point is she allowed to say to her spouse, I'm not happy?
When she's
Without feeling guilty,
Yeah.
without feeling like a bad mom, without feeling like a bad wife. I want to go back to work. I don't want to take care of these
And-
kids all day. I want to go out with my friends.
goes
Those
back-
are those lies that where we know the truth inside of us, and we're so afraid of the consequences of
Right.
being honest.
That's what I was gonna say, because he can easily say, "Well, you agreed to this,"
Right.
and
That goes back
She
to
did.
communicating too as a couple.
yeah.
On each other's needs.
But that can be
His needs, her needs. Like, let's, we're building a
Yeah.
family all these years. Do you even know who I am?
Yeah.
Like, because I would hope that the person that's staying at home with their kids or whatever has some type of desire to share with her spouse who she is. And
But
what
then
she
again,
wants.
it goes back to why we lie. Because I think we all get that communication is important. I think that we all know that in a relationship. That doesn't mean that we are with somebody who we can communicate with. Because I know a
True,
lot of
true.
people who are in relationships where they're like, I would love to sit and share with this person how I feel. I just want to tell them, I'm feeling this, I've changed my mind about this, this is what I'm, and the person is so resistant and they're not open to hear that. And they make it so much either about themselves or they're uncomfortable with the fact that the person in their life is changing, that person just remains a mute. They don't even share their
Yes.
truth.
mean,
And
she's lying
that's
to
a
themselves.
lie.
That is a lie.
And that's a lie.
Absolutely.
And then when it comes to a head again, when that medical, that chronic illness, you've been dealing with it, and all of a sudden now you got to call 911. I need an intervention here because I'm so sick. I think it's gonna kill me. And the person's looking at you like, why didn't you just tell me? Because that's the other person. Why didn't you just tell me? And the person will say, well, I didn't feel like I could. And the reality is, until that person gets sick, they probably couldn't.
But they didn't. Again, it goes back to self, right? You know, she lied to herself about who she wanted him to be for her too. I want somebody to communicate with that gets me, that's receptive, and we can have this great conversation. He's not that person.
But how do you reflect on self when you're not by yourself? It's easy for me to be very much about myself and reflect. But when I am in a relationship that I want it to be sustained, how do I just say, again, it's about me, it's about myself? Explain that to me.
Okay, here's a good example.
That's a good one.
Well, this is
that's hard.
Well,
It's hard.
even in my own marriage, and I'm going to be very raw. I didn't want to have no more kids. We only have one daughter. My husband agreed that was fine, but he always wanted more children. So later on in life, in a very dark time in our life, he shared that with me, and so that's a lie. He lied to me because he really wanted it, and I didn't. But he wanted to please me and keep me happy.
So he just never
that
said
he just
anything.
never said anything. But it would show up in other ways. His behavior. I'm like, what's going on with you? Because there's these things inside of him.
yeah.
It always shows up. There's always something. So for every action, there's a reaction. There's depth. to
So
lies.
with that, Charlene, and that's very profound.
Yeah.
When he finally said to you, here's my truth. All along, I really wanted more children. Let me ask you a question. This is going to be very raw. Did you really always kind of know
I always knew that.
that's what he really
Yeah,
wanted?
yeah, and he didn't say it like that. I wish it went down that way.
But
It
I'm
was
just
in his-
saying,
yeah, in the moment,
just to
yes.
kind of like round it off.
I felt
But
that.
you felt, and that's the thing, that sometimes when we are dealing with our person and they're not sharing their truth, we actually already know.
But she was living her truth.
But you were living your
Right,
truth,
right.
and he wasn't expressing his, even though
Correct.
you knew. So
Exactly.
when he finally said to you out loud what you already knew, what was your response?
I mean, the way he said it was not. I mean, I wish
Right,
it was in an emotional place, and
Because he was just in that state
yes,
of mind.
and it was
but-
always little things here and there that I felt. He knew that, you know. I mean, that's really the only thing he could say that I couldn't give him, or that I wasn't showing up for him that he needed from me, and so that hurt, you know. So how did I respond to him? Was, I don't know. I said, I've always been honest with you. I told him, this is what you led me to believe was okay. If it wasn't okay, then you should let me know that, because that's a big deal. You know, if you want, then maybe I'm not the one for you forever. I would hate that's the truth, but you are a man and you have desires and you deserve what you want too, but I can't give you what I don't know
Right.
you really want either,
Right.
you know. So that's been kind of our growth, is when that was spoken out loud. There's like these revelations show up when we speak
Our
our
truth.
truth. Absolutely. But that was his truth. He was denying to him.
What was interesting is because you were always clear and honest in your truth, but and again, it's so heartfelt, because that is the reality, is that sometimes people lie as a sacrifice for the other person, but yet again, like you said, I'm decorating into a pretty bow, but you're like, it wasn't like that. It was emotional, and it was tense, and it was these things, because that illness was going on for so
Yeah.
long until there became a crisis.
Yeah, he is.
And this is
A
the
little
result.
resentment.
This is why a lie is never worth it.
Right.
It's like, this is the result of a lie, of living. And again, it goes back to the beginning of what we said. No matter how many lies people tell us, the reality is, what is the lie we're telling ourselves?
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, it seems like he may have felt earlier in the relationship that
It was
I'll
okay.
change. Well, no, maybe okay, she'll change, or she'll change, and then the disappointment of you never changing. You know, so we have
He
these
might have been
ideas
telling
of
himself in the
people.
beginning, like, oh, maybe
She'll
Yeah,
come
once
around.
she has one
around.
kid, she'll
Yeah.
have
Right.
another
Yeah.
one,
Maybe,
or something like
Yeah,
that.
you know, and the
Yeah.
disappointment of that, like she's not even budging. Like,
But still, again, that's the
It's not
deception,
fair.
right? Because
Yeah,
now
no.
you're trying to rationalize with saying, okay, there is a want and a need that I have in this relationship, which is in your scenario, it's you know, you were like, I'm clear, I don't want any more kids. And it's interesting because I remember from my relationship when we first met, that was a conversation. And we were in the very beginning stage of the relationship. However, we were at an age where that needed to be talked about because there was a timeline. You know, there's a biological clock. And I was very clear, like, I don't want any more children. However, if that is a want for you, a desire for you, I can respect that. But no, this is where I stand, and I'm unwavered in that because I have made a lot of. There's been a lot of thought behind that decision.
I could tell
It's
you a
not
lot
just
about
like
myself.
it's not just like a sporadic like thing. It's like there's been some thought into that, especially as a woman. You know, there's such a stigma on us to be mothers, you know, and it's like for some of us a choice, and some of us we just actually don't have the choice, or we can't have children. And so
when you know that, though, you
but
know,
I knew
it's like I don't want.
I was a young mother. I was 17 when I had my son. I'm like, I did what I did. I enjoyed the experience of being a mother, but I am ready to do me. And I do not at that stage. My son was a young adult. I am like, I'm not interested in starting over. And I appreciate your desire. However, it's not what I want. Now, there were times as years passed where I questioned. He was like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." I'm thinking, is he really?
And to that point too, I mean, even though I would share with him and I would want him to be happy. If what you want is more children, it's not with me. I was lying to myself by telling him that.
That's good.
You know, that was a lie to myself because really, I don't want to not be with him, but I wanted him to be happy. So which lie is greater, right? Which one is the truth?
Do you think if you would have known, like, and he would have been more forward in the beginning, like saying he wanted more children, do you think you might have made that compromise?
She made the compromise by having one child.
Right? We got married very young too, and part of that choice that we made, we were young, but we married because I was pregnant, and we made it work, and I don't have any regrets for that. But I also believe that there was other things that, I mean, a baby doesn't mean love, right? That comes from love, right? We would hope so, but that wasn't what I wanted. He has a big family. I don't come from a very big family. So it's just feeling that, but it's also, at the end of the day, it's knowing what direction his life is. Where is he going? What does he want? And us discussing this together and it being okay in discussion, but really in the heart of the matters, it's different between he and I, you know, and that.
So I have a question because I think this is very important. I think a lot of people get to that crossroad, especially where you're such a great testimony to being a young couple, having a child at a young age, and at some point getting to a fork in the road where one goes in one direction and one goes in the other. And in this example, it's like kids versus not wanting more kids. When the truth comes to a head, where this person says, "This is what I always wanted, and you didn't give it to me," however that showed up, and you are like, "But I told you this, and you made me believe this." At that point, what do you do with the truths when they both face each other finally?
Well, that's what we went through the last couple of years. That's actually that's been empty nest into that, because not until my daughter went off to college did it really show up even more in him, because now there's no kids in the house.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he was really in his feelings, and I couldn't understand. I was like, this is our time to travel, let's go conquer the world, and he was very in a different place than I was. And so we had to learn that. I had to learn that it wasn't me, and then all these things just started to surface. So that's actually a real close 3 years in this, but we've overcome that in challenging ways. It wasn't easy. I mean, learning about each other and who we are, and learning how to communicate each other's needs without trying to please the other person at the same. It's like, I'm going to be me, you be you. I'm going to love you. I learned how to love him unconditionally later. That's just how our story went. And he loved me unconditionally from the beginning. At least that's what I felt. Things changed later on because of his needs not being met, but he wasn't honest with himself either. So I can't take responsibility for that.
And also
part
too, when you feel like you have lied, let's say, how do I want to put this? Because this is a lot of burden. It could be a lot of burden for the recipient who was lied to. This is why lying is so treacherous too, when it comes to something as impactful as that. When you're not honest about your truth in the relationship, throughout the relationship, even as it changes, is that when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to keep it real about how I feel and how I've felt all these years. and now you've shared that with your partner, and your partner's like blindsided in a way.
Right.
Like, I kind of knew, but you always made me believe that you were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now you carry the burden of that not hanging over your head of, well, you never, it's like every fight could be, well, we never had more kids. And that's unfair. So how do you get past that? Because I can see myself on the opposite end of having maybe bent. In my mind, I'm bending. That's what I'm thinking. I bent for this person. I did for them what they wanted. And now I want me. I want to live my life and do my thing, and I want to express. And now that person's like having to adapt to that.
I think we can all be selfish in that if we think just of self. You know, just how I felt about it or just how it affected me. So I've learned to be, I've intentionally trained myself to try to view things from both perspectives at the best that I can. So sometimes, you know, when you reevaluate yourself, it's like, okay, I could see, you know, my fault in that. And I think that's very mature.
Yes.
And
Well, there's a lot of growth in
there's
that.
so
Yes.
much like that impacts the way we view things, you know, our upbringings. And you know, my recent experience, my upbringing was my dad was always around. My mom could be dating whoever, and my dad was always welcome at my house. My family, if they were dating somebody, they were always welcome at family gathering. It doesn't matter who's around. And then I date a person that was just not acceptable, period. So it doesn't make either one of us right or wrong. It's just, can we come to an agreement? Can we come to a medium in that? And you know, unfortunately, it doesn't always work. So we have to be mindful of just how the other person sees it. And I don't think a lot of people can do
And you
that.
can only be mindful of how they say it if they're honest.
If they're honest with you.
And this is, again, it goes back to that. It's like, one of the questions that I got, I'm reading through as we're talking, and one of the questions that someone asked me was, is it ever okay to lie? What do you think?
Is it ever okay to
Yeah.
lie? I mean, your integrity will speak through that. I mean,
But is there ever a time, like with you're saying with your example with you and your husband, in his mind maybe he felt it was okay to not be overly honest about his desire to have more
so
kids?
is honesty and lying the same? Dishonesty and lying the same? I think lie just weighs heavier for some reason. A lie to me just seems like dishonesty is maybe because he wasn't sure yet, so it leaned towards one side or whoever. I mean, dishonesty and
That's a
lie.
good
I think I feel different about those two things.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah, because I think words have different weight for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
For me, a lie is a lie is a lie is a lie.
It's black and white.
It's black and white for me. There's no real gray areas necessarily, unless it's like a surprise party. You're gonna lie to me about a surprise party. But I mean, when
But
it comes
that's
to,
still a lie.
but I mean, real
Yeah.
life issues where for me, principally speaking, I need to know where I stand with a person that I'm with in my life.
I'd rather just know the truth, honestly. Even though if it's gonna hurt me, I'd rather just know it.
So you don't think there's ever let's get your like insight on this little G. I like she just takes it all in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would rather someone be brutally honest to my face, and I would have to face whatever those
Yeah.
consequences are, but I cannot stand if someone doesn't like, and I could maybe be guilty of it because maybe I'm not going to tell you something, but if you ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth,
Right.
1000%. So I could be, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Both ways. Because,
Yeah.
and now if someone does that to me and doesn't tell me, I have a problem with that.
Right.
So now I guess I'm being a little narcissistic.
Not narcissistic.
Double
It's like, well, double
Exactly,
standards.
double
Okay, so
standards.
here's my argument with double standards because I get this happens all the time in my relationship because we're both very headstrong people. And he'll say, "You're such a hypocrite. You're such a double standard." And I'm like, in my mind, it's like it's not a double standard. It's just these things are more important to me than they are to you. Like there are issues that I have a bigger problem with than you do, and I will admit to you that when I do it, it's fine because you actually don't have a problem with it. But when you do it, it's a problem. So it's not a matter of like meets like in that sense. It's not like you can do this and I can do this and it's equal. There are some things that are equally unacceptable for both of us. And then there are other things where for some reason with my own past life
That's the key.
that
Yes.
is much more heavy. Like you said, dishonesty and a lie are very different, whereas for me, they're the same.
But do you determine that in your relate? Do you say, okay, this weighs heavier on you, but not on me because of whatever happened?
It's
in the
having
past?
grace. At the end of the
You
day,
know,
it's having
like,
grace
who
with
Yeah.
others and
determines that?
ourselves.
Because
Yes.
Well, I think that it's not even a matter of who has to determine it, has to make the determination about it. I think it's a matter of conversation. It's
I
a
think
communication.
I was about to say, like, communicate.
Yeah.
Like, you communicate to that person, this is what really bothers me.
Right.
So I would prefer if you tell me the truth
Mm-hmm.
on these, you know, whatever they are that really have you and your
Absolutely.
feelings, and vice versa. Whatever is your, you know, whatever is your like deal breakers or things that are going to bother you, I want to know so we can
Exactly.
be transparent and be honest with each
Because
other.
they can be so entirely different. Everybody has a different trigger. There are triggers in each and every one of us that are very unique to who we are and our whole narrative, an entire
And our
life
makeup.
story.
Yeah,
Yes.
So when we're in a relationship, it's not that I'm trying to be a hypocrite. I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to create a double standard.
Right.
But what I am saying is that this adversely affects me differently than it affects you. And so for me, when this situation presents itself, I'm gonna have a problem with it. And you may look at that like, what's your problem? It's not even that big of a deal. But to me,
it's a
it
big
is.
deal.
So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I'm just saying that it just affects me differently,
Right.
and we need to have that conversation.
And you
so
want
we
it to be
understand.
understood. You can have a conversation, but are you communicating and it's being understood?
Right.
But
You know,
also,
that's
if you say this affects me, it doesn't affect you, but then you go ahead and do it, and then that person is
like
like,
an alcoholic. Like someone
Yeah,
who-
it's like-
uh-huh.
so
Well,
I
see,
don't.
Like, what do you mean? Like, give an example.
Okay, you've established. I don't want you talking to your any exes that you have. Okay, it doesn't bother me one way whether you talk
Right.
to an ex or not. To that person, it might bother them, but it's okay for you to talk to an ex. Like, how do you establish that? You can justify you talking to an ex, but when I do it, and
But that, okay, so that to me, like, there are certain things that there has to be an agreement that it's across the board,
Boundaries.
especially when
Yeah.
it's that much of an issue for you.
right.
So for like that example, what I have learned is that I have in my past relationships that didn't work out, but when I got past the emotional stage of the relationship, I'm very amicable with those people. I don't have
Bad blood.
I
any
don't
bad
either.
blood.
Yeah.
Now, does it mean that I have to talk to them
Daily.
on a
Right.
regular basis? Does it mean that we need to know each other's lives and we talk every day? No, because I feel like that's inappropriate. Am I going to go on a one-on-one dinner date with
But
this
we're
person?
justifying the lie.
No, but what I'm saying
It's a
is,
measure.
I'm just explaining
Yeah.
so for me, if my ex reaches out to me and says, hey, how's life? How's it going? I'm comfortable with saying, I'm good, how are you?
Yeah.
And having small talk, okay? But at the same time, now I was always like, I'm good. This is who I am. I'm very comfortable having conversations with my exes. However, what I realized at some point, and this took some growing up on my
Right.
part, is that the person that I'm with is incredibly uncomfortable because his experiences, when a relationship is over, it's over.
Right.
I don't have to talk to that person. We have no means of connection. Over is over. And so I had to take a step back and recognize and appreciate that that was his stance without it being me conforming to his control.
Yes. Yes.
Because there is a defining line with that.
Boundaries,
So it's
yeah.
not like I'm going to do everything you want me to do because you want to control me versus let's have a talk about this and let's talk about why that is a thing for you and why this is a thing for me and let's find a place in the middle.
Right.
So now it's not, now before maybe in the past I would reach out to an ex, say, hey, how's it going or happy birthday. And now for me it's like, no, I'm not going to initiate a conversation. However, and I made that clear with my partner, if that person reaches out to me and says, hey, happy birthday, Lorraine, thank you for the happy birthday, how's life? And there'll be a small conversation, then it's done. But there has to be a form of compromise
You're not
without
opening
control.
a door for someone to
Without
get back in.
control, yeah.
Yeah. So I
And that my partner is clear and understands that I am me, I'm an individual, but as an individual, I totally love and utterly respect you. And if you ever feel that that level of respect is compromised, then it needs to be a conversation rather than a lie. And that's where,
Which I think a lot of this all boils down back to communicating.
And boundaries, yeah.
yeah. So the last question I'm going to ask you all, because it kind of ties into what we just said, is how do you know and understand that the honesty is being honest versus you being controlled? Because I think that sometimes that gets very skewed, that line gets very skewed.
Well, I think that when someone feels control is because it's an internal thing. There's a reason why they're feeling control for whatever reason. Either they didn't communicate to get clarity, or there's something that triggers up front that creates that feeling of control. Again, I don't know. I think that's yeah.
It's hard
Yeah, it is.
because you want to make your partner happy, but you don't want them to be in their insecurity so much that you give them an inch, they take a yard, and then it becomes something where you're constantly like, where's the line with that? What do you have to say?
Yeah, so I was in a relationship prior, and you know, I was with someone who was controlling for their own whatever insecurity issues they had, but you know, it turned into an inch and they took a mile, and eventually I was being told not to go to the gym. It became crazy, and you know, I had to take a step back and realize, what am I doing with this person? They're controlling me from seeing my friends. They're controlling my life and what I'm doing. This isn't someone I want to be with.
Right. And having to lie with just interaction and just doing you.
And I would have to lie, you know, and I didn't feel bad about it because I was, you know, I was being controlled, and I wasn't doing anything wrong, but my life was being like taken away.
No one can control you without not anyone without permission, right? People
Exactly.
are like,
and
we
I
teach
allowed
people
that, you know,
how
I
to treat
allowed
us.
that.
Exactly. So I
Right.
think the more wiser we become, the more we're able to show up and show people how we deserve to be treated or how we want to be
Right.
treated. So
It's a hard one
It's
because
hard.
you find yourself in a situation where it's like you don't even realize it at
You
first,
don't realize
right?
it.
And then
'Cause
it's
you
like
think you're in love with this person,
Yeah,
and
and,
you're like, oh, they're insecure. So now you're trying to
You're
make up
trying-
excuses
right.
and lies to yourself about, you know, why they act that way.
especially if you don't know the signs of it, you know. So if it's something new to you, it's like, you know, and sometimes that controlling demeanor is actually attractive, you know, because it's like,
depending on
I mean, you know, there's certain levels you put, you know, if this person's beating me or something, but they're like, oh, they just want me, you know, they just want to take care of me, they just want to protect me, they don't want nobody else to want me.
That's interesting, yeah, because to Key's point, like what she's saying is like, at some point, the person's like, don't go to the gym, don't hang out with your friends. And in the beginning, you can confuse that for like, oh, they just want to spend this time with me, they
Right,
want to make it
right.
about me.
Right.
And then at some point, you start to feel like, but I really want to work out, or I need to make this fun, I want to hang out with my friends. And so you rope yourself into lying to that person to make them feel secure, so you can just actually go do your thing.
And that's what it
that's
turned
very
into.
unhealthy.
Like, it turned into like an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, that's what I believed. Oh, they just want to be
They
with
just
me.
want, yeah, it's
Oh,
like,
they love me. Oh, me.
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's all about
And then
you.
it got more intense and
Yeah.
crazy. And I, you know, it was the first relationship that I was in. And to me, I thought, oh, this is the love of my life. And, you know, it turned that's not the case.
Right. So it's kind of a hard, because it's hard to say when you haven't experienced it. You know, I've experienced, not in the degree you have, but I've experienced some controlling men,
Right.
and I didn't know how to identify it. You
Right.
know, so I learned my experiences, and it's like, okay, now I know when I see this
What are
red flag,
signs? Right. What are the
that's
red
it.
flags?
It's got to be done.
But it's
There's
good
no,
too
Right.
because now moving forward into your next relationship, you know what to look for,
Right.
and you know what to accept, and you know who you are.
Right.
And that was a big part of my growth, was understanding who I am and what I'm willing to settle for, and that I'm not willing to be with someone
Right.
who's taking away what my freedoms are.
Yeah.
There should be a synergy in relationships. There should be an ebb and a flow. And whenever there's a blockage, I think that's what we need to learn. That's the next step. Whether you've been with one person or 10 or 20, I think there's that give and take, that flow. And we got to figure out what that flow is if we're choosing to stay in that relationship or friendship or whatever. Otherwise, we got to look at ourselves and why am I still here? What do I need to learn? Where do I need to grow? whether we can see that yet or not, we'll
Right.
figure that
Right.
out. You know, that's the journey.
And how much am I willing to accept somebody's truth?
Mm-hmm.
So let's conclude with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get each one of yours perspective on this subject of lies. What would you, Charlene, advise those out there who are listening as to not the traumatic lies, not the crazy lies, but the lies we're talking about right now, those little lies that we tell ourselves and thus then we tell our person. What would you tell people how to break those barriers so they feel comfortable with their person to tell the truth?
What would I
And is the truth important?
Well, okay, but I'm gonna just make sure that I'm understanding this because I want to bring it.
Bring it, girl.
Yeah. So what would I advise others on how to identify the lie and live in the truth? Did I? say
Okay,
that
so let me
right?
rephrase it, and this is for all of us.
Okay.
What would you tell people out there? What would you suggest to them about telling their truth and how important that is in a relationship? That's a better question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell people about telling their truth and how important that is in a relationship?
Telling their truth or being their truth?
Telling and being. I guess if you have to tell it, you got to be it.
Well, I think because if someone's asking me, I'm going to tell you. But if we're just being, again, it depends on what level of my relationship I'm on. If I'm just meeting you, I'm going to show up in who I am.
Okay,
My truth
let
is
me
gonna be-
rephrase the question
Okay.
again.
Okay.
I'll say it this way. For those of the people that are out there right now who are in a relationship in which they are not being honest, they're not telling a truth about something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting to the point where they're becoming critical in that relationship. Resentment, bitterness, whatever it may be. What would you tell them would be the best thing to do as far as communicating that truth to their person?
Can I answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I would say to have an honest conversation with yourself
Mm-hmm.
First.
and start there
Mm-hmm.
and
Write this down. Write this
be
down.
very
Write this down.
intentional. I love
Yes.
the word intentional.
Yes, for
Be
sure.
very intentional about the things that you really desire and the things that you really want. And not thinking of the other person and what they think of what your truth will be, but really being honest with yourself and verbalize it the best way you can to that person. But you have to be ready for that and you have to decide that. So it could be a month from now or 2 months from now, but you have to decide that on your own and be intentional with that thought.
What are you seeking validation on that you feel that you can't be who you are because it might lead to either neglect or disconnect or, abandonment, whatever that may look like. So just showing up in your truth and asking yourself, what do I need that I'm not getting, that I'm afraid to lose, even if I get a little bit, that I can't be honest about it. So just really identify that. Back to what she said as far as being honest with yourself. It's all just internally just processing and just seeing it from the outside, looking at it. If that was your girlfriend, how would you advise her? What would you say to her if she was in your exact situation right now?
And role play it,
Yeah.
right?
Totally, yeah.
I'm always having
Absolutely.
conversations with myself.
Yeah.
What about you, G?
I just think you always have to stay true to who you are. And when you step out of that, then you really want to reevaluate what's going on. And if you know that that's not who you are, then that's something that you might want to consider. It's not the best relationship for you.
And you know that in your gut. If it's not you or something that you agree with, or it's not on your moral compass, you know that it's not something that is even gonna flourish to be
Our intuition
a
tells
good
us that,
relationship.
for sure.
Like, I always trust my gut, and when I don't trust my gut, it's something.
trust your
If
gut,
I don't
you bust
trust
a
my
nut.
gut, I know, Lorraine. My gut always tells me. It always tells me.
That's a new tagline. If you don't trust your gut, you bust a nut.
Oh, God.
Let's see. That will be edited out. I'm sorry.
That's
If
funny.
you don't trust your gut, no. But you know your intuition always tells you the truth, your truth. So.
What about you, Lolo?
And
Well,
you?
I will say this, and I think all of you say very valid things, and so I'm taking notes. But I think first and foremost, that you have to honor yourself with truth always. As painful and as hard as it may be, it is much easier to walk away from a thing if you know that you can walk away with your truth.
Yeah.
You're not responsible ever for the recipient's response to your truth, but you are responsible for your honesty, because that's where your integrity lies, and that's what keeps you aligned as a person.
Absolutely.
So I would say that if a person is currently dealing with something where they have not been honest, to your point, and I think one of you said it as well, is I think the first thing you need to do is you need to take a seat back and write down what that lie is, what that big lie is in your life, what that elephant in the room is for you. And I think when you write that down, I think you need to be clear. And the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, why do I tell myself this lie, and why do I reflect that lie in my relationship? Because you have to be clear first on where the trust issues lie. Because when you're telling a lie, it's a trust issue. And that trust issue could be very profound in your life from something way before you enter in that relationship, or it can be as a result of something that has happened in the relationship.
Right.
And I think you need to decipher that first, because that will help you with your approach when you're honest.
Right.
And then when you figure that out, you go to that person and you say to them, I have to share a truth with you, but I want to first tell you a little bit about me and why I chose to tell the lie. Because you need a person to understand who you are so they can relate to you. And then when you tell them this is the reason you lie, before you tell them your truth, you make sure they heard you. And you say to them, did you hear what I said? And tell me what you understood. And once they hear that,
No.
that's my work phone.
Oh wow. Is that a good sign?
No,
Oh.
it's a telemarketing for sure.
Oh.
You want me to just turn the ringer off?
I'm the one that emphasized turn the ringer off, and then
I know,
that
I
happens.
know, that's funny.
The 487 4059?
Yeah.
You need to answer. Okay.
Man.
That was good. You'll know where to pick up on there.
Okay. But I mean that though. Okay. So
No,
I'll say
that's
this
good.
again. Yeah. Can't believe the freaking phone rang.
I know it was good. It was
Yeah.
like really good.
You're like,
I know, I was like intrigued. I'm like,
okay, so I will say this. Okay. All right, so I will say this, and I mean this. The first thing you need to do, and again, it's something that you all, a few of you have mentioned, is that the first thing you need to do is you need to stand in your truth. You need to be honest with who you are, because at the end of the day, you can walk away from a thing much easier if you knew that you stood in your truth.
right.
And the truth is not always comfortable. Some of the most uncomfortable conversations we'll ever have are honest conversations.
Yeah.
But don't deny yourself or the person that you're with the truth. Because I'm a firm believer, if I don't tell the person who I am and what my truth is, I rob them the opportunity of doing the right thing by me. And you will never know if they'll do the right thing by you if you're not honest. But before you go and have that conversation, the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what is the lie all really about? Because it's a trust issue. At the end of the day, it truly is a trust issue. And that trust issue has either to do with everything before that person and before you enter that relationship, or it has to do with something that has transpired within that relationship that doesn't make you feel secure enough to be honest. Because honesty can create a lot of vulnerability.
Right.
And then you have that conversation with yourself and you're clear on that. And that way, when you go to your person, you can say to your person, I have to tell you, I have to be honest with you about something. And before you tell them that truth, you share your story. And when you share your story with that person, you make sure that they heard you. You need to make sure that they're on board with what you're feeling. And then you tell them that this is vulnerable, but I'm telling you this truth because I want us to start on a page that has honesty, because that's a huge, huge foundation to build a relationship on.
Right.
And then you express to them your fear within the lie. I don't want to lose you. I'm afraid of how you're going to respond. And I think that that's a great start. And whether that person accepts what you have to say or not, you can know within yourself and you can free yourself with your truth. I think that when we lie and we're dishonest in anything, especially those little things, again, I'm going to keep saying this, one little illness can start off as this. You know, cancer starts as a speck.
And it spreads through the whole body.
And then it grows, and it grows, and it grows. And the more it gets undetected, And the more it goes untreated, the bigger it grows and the faster it grows until it kills you. And you got to ask yourself, is that lie, because it's cancer inside of you, is it worth it? And if you're in a relationship where you have a partnership where you don't feel safe to tell this truth, you got to be honest with yourself about what that's all about too.
Right.
So,
Or it could be a virus that spreads and it's contagious.
yeah.
And we're into a whole other thing. Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
So I want to thank you guys again for tuning in to Lolo's House and these lipstick ladies. We would love your feedback to hear what you have to say. Share with us some of your truths about what you think about us.
Also, I mean, this is relationships, and we're talking about the meat and the potatoes, and it can get a little heavy. But you got to remember to enjoy, right? Enjoy your partner, enjoy your relationships, have fun, find that place where you're funny, you're excited, you just enjoy life. But this is real stuff. We need to address this too, because it makes all those other things so much more better.
Right.
The reality is that truth and honesty is so important to us that we place ourselves here being honest and transparent with
Yes.
you all.
Yeah.
That's right.
So until next time, check out these lipstick ladies. You'll see us on Instagram, Lolo's House, loloscoaching.com. We look forward for your feedback and wait till you see us live the next time.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Stay safe. We love you and goodbye.
Bye.